What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel for another episode of the Ask Me Anything series. This could be the final one of the season, depending on how long the Stanley Cup final goes. I hope everybody's having a fantastic week, and as always, huge thank you to everyone for the awesome questions. We have a lot of fun things to talk about in this episode. If you guys are excited for the Stanley Cup finals, leave a like on this video, and let's get started with the first question from Hatcher Kane, who says, who is your pick for the Cup? I'm taking the Panthers over the Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup final. I'm not sure if I said this on the channel before, but one of my best friends is a Panthers fan, which, yes, might be a little bit weird to some of you because we live in Halifax, but it's a long story. So for his sake, I'm rooting for the Panthers, and I'm sure that's a little bit of a reason why I'm picking them to win, but also it's not like they've just fluked their way to the Stanley Cup finals. Since being down 3-1 to the Bruins in the first round, they have lost one whole game since then. That's absurd. They're on an insane run right now, and they just look unbeatable, especially with Sergei Bobrovsky playing the way he's playing, Matthew Tkachuk coming up with what seems to be a clutch goal in every single game whenever Florida needs one, whether it's late in regulation or in overtime. The Panthers are giving off the vibe of a team that is just not going to be denied, so I'm picking them to win the 2023 Stanley Cup. Should be a really fun series. The next question we have comes from Hypebeast Dylan, who says, who do you think should win the Conn Smythe if the Panthers win the Cup, Tkachuk or Bobrovsky? At this point, after 3 rounds, heading into the Stanley Cup finals, I really do not think there is a wrong answer between those two. The obvious answer to this question, though, is probably whoever has the better Stanley Cup final series against Vegas between Tkachuk and Bob is probably going to win the Conn Smythe if Florida wins the Stanley Cup. I also did see some people throwing out the idea, even if Florida loses this series and Bob keeps up this unbelievable play, could he still win the Conn Smythe? I believe the last time a player from the losing team won playoffs MVP, it was J.S. Shiger when he was goaltender for the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, so it would be pretty cool to see that happen again. The next question we have comes from Matt, who says, what are your thoughts on the Joe Veleno play at the World Championships as a Red Wings fan, and how does it affect your feelings towards him as a player? Yeah, that play was really dirty. Not a good look for Joe Veleno at all. If you guys didn't see the play, I'll try to remember to put like a picture or a little clip on the screen as I'm talking about it here, but you just gotta know better than that. Yeah, he's a young player, but even in minor hockey, you gotta know better than that. It just has no place in the game. Very dirty, very dangerous. I don't think it really affects my feelings towards him as a player at all, because it's not like Joe Veleno has a history of being a dirty player and doing this kind of thing. It was just a really stupid mistake, and hopefully one that he learns from and never does anything like this again. Moving along now, this next question comes from Andrew, who says, considering all the playoff success Vegas has had, do you think the expansion format and rules were fair, or did the league give them too much of an edge to compete right away? I feel like part of it was teams mismanaging their assets, but would be curious to know what you think, and also really appreciate the kind words. This is definitely a really good question, and also it's not even just Vegas. I mean, look at Seattle in their second season. They knocked off the defending Stanley Cup champions in the first round. They're looking pretty good. My thoughts on it, though, I do think the current expansion format is fair. Like you said, a lot of it, I think, especially with Vegas, more so than when Seattle came into the league, was teams mismanaging their assets big time. One thing you really do have to keep in mind, though, when talking about things like that is the NHL is a business, and just for an example, Seattle paid an installment fee of $650 million to make the Kraken the 32nd NHL team. Nobody wants to pay $650 million just to put a team in the NHL so they can be completely awful for, the first decade. When you're expanding to a new market, to a new audience, to a new fan base, you want the arena to be filled right away, and you want it to stay that way. So you have to give these expansion teams a fair shot at competing relatively quickly, and I think the NHL does a good job at that. I think the format is fine. Moving along now to the next question. This one comes from Kevin Jennings, who says, which prospect in the upcoming draft do you think would be a major steal? And also really appreciate the support. So I'm probably not the best person to ask questions like this, just because I don't really, scout prospects or follow prospects that in depth throughout the year in their draft year. I have a good idea of who the top guys are, the guys that are expected to go in the lottery and stuff like that. But for the most part, I just have all my focus on the NHL because that's mainly what I make my videos on. So I follow players once they get to the NHL, not really that much before they get there. That being said, though, I do still have an answer for this question, if this counts, because he is expected to go pretty high in the draft. But I really feel like if Matvei Michkov falls down to, even 5th overall or below that somehow, I think, 6, 7, 8 years from now, we're going to look back on that and say, like, how the hell did that happen? Just based off of pure talent, if Matvei Michkov wasn't signed to the KHL through, I think, 2025, 26 or something like that, I really feel like he would be neck and neck for Adam Fantilli for that 2nd overall spot. I really believe whenever Matvei Michkov comes over from the KHL to the NHL, he's going to be an absolute beast. So I guess that's my answer, even though he's not technically going to be a steal because he is going to go in the top 10, but you know what I mean. Moving along now to the next question. This one comes from Caleb, who says, what are your thoughts on Arturs Silovs and the entire Latvian team and the amazing world championships they just had, taking down teams like Sweden and the US? I didn't realize how passionate the fans in Latvia were till now, and also really appreciate the support. Really not much else to say other than the fact that it was an amazing story. Really cool to see Arturs Silovs, goaltender of the tournament, rightfully so. I'm sure Canucks fans are probably pretty excited about him now after his performance in the World Championships. If you didn't know, he is a part of the Canucks organization after Latvia defeated the United States for the bronze medal. Unfortunately, I did see some people on Twitter kind of making fun of them for how hard they celebrated, but you have to realize this is absolutely massive for a country like Latvia, who have had little to no success at the international level in terms of hockey, especially being one of the host nations of the tournament itself. Those players in that Latvian team had to feel like they were on top of the world, and it was awesome to see. I know it's a cliche, but things like this happening is how the sport grows. Imagine, being a young Latvian kid watching them pull that off, celebrating like that, the crowd going wild. You're telling me that kid would not want to grow up and play for the Latvian national team? Next up, this question comes from Wade Matthews, who says, a recent report said the Sharks may be open to moving the 4th overall pick. Do you think they should move it, and what do you think a return package would look like? As a Sharks fan, I really hope we just stick and pick. They desperately need top-end talent in their prospect pool. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot about this, and I'm with you. I really think they should just hold on to the pick and use it to select one of Leo Carlsson or Matvei Michkov. Guarantee yourself one of those two guys, assuming 1 and 2 is Bedard and Fantilli. I really like Michkov a lot as a pick for the San Jose Sharks because this is a team that's really not going to be competing or even close to it, I feel like, over the next 3 to 4 seasons. And then by the time Matvei Michkov comes over from the KHL, by the time his contract is up, maybe the San Jose Sharks are starting to come out of the rebuild a little bit and things are starting to look up. And then you add Michkov, who at that time could be ready to come and dominate the NHL right away. And as far as what a return could look like if they do end up trading the pick, I'm assuming it would just be for like multiple first round draft picks, like maybe a team that has 2 picks in this year's first round trades them both to move up or something like that. I can't see them moving this pick for a roster player. I don't think that makes any sense, even if it's a younger guy. Ultimately, I feel like the Sharks will probably hold on to the pick. Just because it came out that they're open to moving it doesn't mean they will. I mean, if you're a GM, you should probably be open to anything and always be listening, right? Or else you're not doing your job. The next question we have comes from Tizzy number 4, who says, what do you think of Barry Trotz's first move as the Preds GM, firing Hines and most likely bringing in Brunette for the new head coach? I like it a lot. I think it's definitely time for a new era in Nashville. They've kind of been stuck in, mediocrity for a long time now. It's time to head in a new direction. Not to say John Hines did a terrible job as the bench boss in Nashville, but it's not a surprise at all that Barry Trotz would go and make a coaching change. Usually when a team gets a new GM, that GM wants to hire their own coach, bring in their own guy. Preds fans, in my opinion, should definitely be really excited about this. Like I said, I think it's long overdue for Nashville to kind of get like a fresh start, and I think that's what this feels like. This next question comes from Zach, who says, does Devin Levi start next year in the NHL or the AHL? Buffalo has 3 goalies, including Levi, for the NHL as of now. Based on what we saw from Devin Levi to close out the regular season, albeit a really small sample size, I think he's ready to be a full-time NHL goaltender, whether he's the starter for Buffalo next season or the backup. I think he will start on the NHL roster. I feel like they're going to roll into next season with a tandem of Levi and Pekka Luukkonen. Now for the final question of the episode, this one comes from Isaiah, who says, what are your thoughts on the Leafs hiring Brad Treliving as GM? As a Leafs fan, I'm pretty happy with the hire because I think he was the best of all options out there, or at least the experienced options, but I'm curious as to see what you think of the move. I'm sort of indifferent on it. Don't love it, don't hate it. I think it does make sense. Brad Treliving is a guy who, like you said, is a very experienced general manager. He was GM of Calgary for a long time. He knows what it's like to be the GM of a Canadian NHL team, to be in a Canadian market, have all those eyes on you. I know there's a lot of people kind of poking fun at the Maple Leafs because of how that Tkachuk trade looks now with Tkachuk in the Stanley Cup Finals and, Huberdeau not having a great first season in Calgary. But let's not forget that at the time that trade happened, we were all praising Brad Treliving for how well he did, considering the fact that he didn't really have any leverage. He's made some really good moves as Flames GM. He's also made some bad ones, signed some bad deals, signed some good deals. Who's to say how he's going to do in Toronto, honestly? If I were a Leafs fan, I would just go into this new era open-minded. I wouldn't write Brad Treliving off right away or anything like that. Let's see what type of moves he makes as Maple Leafs GM before we start judging him as Leafs GM. So that is going to wrap up this episode of the Ask Me Anything series. I hope you guys all enjoyed, and again, thank you all for the fantastic questions. Even if your question didn't get get featured in the video, just know I appreciate you. I read every single one. If this is your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all soon.